Thank you so much, and hi everybody. And I also want to welcome you to this webinar on bullying, migration and integration at school level. So I'm the vice chair of this action, and I'm very happy to present some of our work to you today. But first, I want to give you a little bit information about our cost action before I dive into the topic, so to say. So the heart of our action is promoting capacity in enhancing integration and bullying intervention via collaboration. We started out with 16 institutions committing themselves to the action and application, but we are now 32 member countries. We are the 64 Action Management Committee members. And 18 of the countries are inclusiveness target countries. So among these, Cyprus, Hungary, Albania, and Serbia, for example. Altogether, 131 are members of working groups in this action. Official starting date for us, that is when we had our first management committee meeting, was 2nd of April, 2019. Thus, our action was supposed to last throughout 2022, but because of COVID, we got an extension. Thus, it will end by 1st of October this year. And just a little bit of how we work. We meet once, or were supposed to meet physically once per semester in the management committee and working groups. But because of COVID, we were forced to have online meetings instead for about a year. We have also had 2 steering group meetings each semester, and then working group have worked separately, individually, in meetings and communicated by email. But despite collaboration online, we have managed to do a lot of good work, I think. So who are we? James O'Higgins Norman from Dublin City University is the chair of our action, with me as the vice chair. Peter Smith from London is the STSM leader. So short-term scientific mission is or was, as you probably know, institutional visits aimed at supporting individual mobility, fostering collaboration between individuals. So PhDs and postdoctoral fellows have applied to stay abroad for 5 to 90 days. Then we have Sebastian Wax from Germany as the ITC conference grant leader. The ITC grants was allowed for early career investigators and PhD students from participating ITC to apply for conference grants to attend international science-related conferences on the topic of our action, but which were not organized by our action. So Amador Ordonez from Spain is our communication officer and thus responsible for the website and newsletters. And we have altogether 6 working groups, and their leaders are as follows: Ruth Berkowitz from Israel for working group 1, Janus Giori from Hungary, working group 2, Evelyn Gutzweiler-Hilfenfinger from Germany, working group 3, Niamh O'Brien, United Kingdom, working group 4, and Mutana Samara, working group 5, and Jacek Psisalski from Poland, working group 6. And so I give this presentation on behalf of these colleagues and also on behalf of all the working group members. The topics of the working groups are these. Working group 1 focus on school climate measures, assessment and development of new up-to-date tool. Working group 2 focus on immigration, diversity and school practice. They are gathering or evaluating cross-national data. Working group 3 investigates school bullying, tolerance and integration, and establishing appraising best practice. Working group 4 are interested in pupils' voice and promotion of inclusion, levels of application, practice and benefits. And the topic of working group 5 is school design and safety, importance and provision at national level. And last but not least, working group 6, e-technology, cyberbullying and online safety, support efforts to combat intolerance. Before I go a little bit more into the work of the working groups, I will present a theoretical model and some main concepts and a little bit of previous research. And I will end my presentation with some recommendation for prevention and intervention. So a framework that might be said to be a base for our work is the Bronfenbrenner ecological bioecological model, which focus on interactions between systems. So both for understanding bullying and to prevent and intervene against it, it is important to have in mind the interactions between the different systems. On the individual level, we have characteristics related to each individual. For example, ethnicity is maybe the most relevant for our project. The micro level systems are those closest to the child, like the family, peers, and school. The meso level concern interaction between the different systems at micro level, such as, for example, school-parent collaboration. School and parent collaboration. A relevant system in this project on the exo level is the local policies. And on macro level are the national policy and also, for example, ideologies of cultures. And last, the chrono system include socio-historical conditions, as for example, the increased use of social media, and also migration might be seen as a relevant life event here. And I will relate to this model when I present some of the work in the different working groups later on. But first, migration. We are now on the chrono system. So according to the World Migration Report from 2020, the global estimate is that there were around 281 million international migrants in the world in 2020. Thus, migrants comprise currently 3.6% of the global population. Regionally, Europe hosts the largest number of international migrants with its 82 million in 2019. And the ongoing war in Ukraine has made migration a relevant topic also in European countries that until recently have had less or no migration. Consequently, growing up in multicultural societies and dealing with relations to diverse people have become continuous developmental tasks for most European children and youth. So migration is defined as the movement of people who change their place of residence and who voluntarily or more or less forced settle down in a new geographic region permanently or temporarily. And people who themselves change their place of residence are labeled first-generation immigrants. People who were born into a first-generation immigrant family are second-generation immigrants. Thus, second-generation immigrants are born in the country of settlement, but have parents that migrated from another country. I could also say that there might be different reasons for people to migrate. If the migrant moves because of war or political standpoint, the immigrant is labeled a refugee. If the reasons are related to work, study, family establishment, or reunification, working immigrant is, for example, often the label used. Independent of reason for migrating, immigrant children and youth experience some new cultural, social, and psychological conditions because of the acculturative process taking place. Two dimensions are often or are said to be involved in the acculturation process. First one, maintenance of the heritage, culture, and identity. And the second, relationships sought with people from other cultures. Different combinations of the two dimensions may result in different acculturation strategies: integration, separation, assimilation, or marginalization. Adapting to a different culture by changing attitudes, behaviors, and identifications may be accompanied by acculturative stress, which is the expression used to describe when the process of adapting to a different culture is stressful. Peer relations can support immigrant youth in coping with psychosocial challenges, besides providing an increased feeling of belonging for all youth in multicultural settings. Nevertheless, peer relations can also create a cultural stress because immigration to a new country is usually related to loss of friends in the heritage country and less contact to same ethnic peers in the receiving country. To be included or to include others in a new society is not easy, but especially not for the young population. And bullying might be seen as a threat for developing inclusive and diversity-friendly schools and societies. A systematic review of the available scientific empirical evidence conducted on the topic of migration and bullying was done in 2019 on a mission from UNESCO. This review showed that bullying is a serious issue in schools among children with immigrant background. So what do we mean by bullying? Definitions used usually concern three elements: negative behaviors intended to cause either physical, emotional, or relational harm, and the aggression is repeated over time and involves imbalance of power. And we call it cyberbullying when the bullying happens using electronic means. Prejudice-based bullying refers to bullying, either traditionally or online, that has roots in group-based prejudice. It is also often called identity-based bullying, bias-based bullying, stigma-based bullying, or discriminatory bullying. All these concepts are used interchangeably, which I will also do. Ethnic bullying is one type of prejudice or discriminatory bullying in where the selection of the victim is based on their group membership. In addition to the ethnic or migratory background, other group belonging may be age, gender, gender orientation, religion, disability. These may also be reasons for bullying others. Educational research has shown that stigma-based bullying is more common in cyberspace than in real life, and online hate postings are part of this picture. In this way, bullying has been globalized in many ways. Furthermore, youth who experience bias-based bullying based on multiple social identities report more negative outcomes of bullying and higher levels of school avoidance and fear than those students who only report one type of bias-based bullying and those who experience non-bias-based bullying. If we go back to ethnic bullying and look into the mechanisms why it happened, we might have on the individual level stereotypes, prejudice, and self-justification processes, as well as emotional processes because of a cultural stress, as I mentioned. I have myself done studies on how immigrant boys in Norway bully others to feel affiliated with one another. This was not ethnic bullying, as the target may have been both ethnic minority and majority pairs. But the thing is that the common ethnicity among the bullies function as glue between them. Having a common enemy increased their closeness. This shows how ethnicity may play a role in also bullies. The study has been replicated in 2 other countries and show the same results, independent of different migration groups, immigrant policy in the country, or migration history. On the micro level, we may have school composition status among peers, school climate factors, stereotypes and beliefs within the peer group, as well as socialization of stereotypes and prejudice from teachers and parents. On the macro level, there might be tensions and prejudice at the society level in the community, and also mass media play a role. So to develop evidence-based intervention, which is the relative weight of these mechanisms? The concept of prejudice is central. unlike for traditional bullying, prejudice play a role and are a stronger trigger for bullying ethnic minority peers than having a powerful status among peers. I recommend this paper by my colleague Simona Caravita and colleagues. Here, prejudice on the individual level was measured, but from Bronfenbrenner's model that I showed you in the introduction, we can understand that this mechanism is influenced by prejudice on both micro level and also macro level. So I will now go more into some of the work that the different working groups in tribes have done. More specific results will be published in a book. So here I give you just a teaser. Working Group 1 in this tribe's network explores inclusion among first and second generation migrants with a specific focus on promoting integration and the role of school educators, which might be said to represent the microsystem in Bronfenbrenner's bioecological model. Qualitative data was collected from 6 different European countries, and the results from the interviews with migrant students and school educators revealed that students tended to blame themselves for being bullied at school, whereas school educators tended to downplay children's negative experiences with peers at school. The adults seemed to tolerate peer segregation and thus did not see it as an obstacle to migrant children inclusion at school. The communication problems between school and parents and lack of competencies to work in multicultural classroom seemed to be important barriers for inclusion. So here we also touch upon the meso level because it's collaboration between school and parents. Working Group 2, this work is actually related to the previous one as it investigates educational programs and projects for inclusion for migrant students with a qualitative approach. In this study, 5 countries are included and the voice of teachers and principals are reported. Also here, intercultural competence among adults in school seem to be a challenge, although general and targeted programs for newly arrived migrants might be important for their inclusion and learning. Working Group 2 has also looked in depth regarding home-school collaboration. Thus, it points to the meso system also. This work attempts to fill the gap in the literature pointing to school practices that involve parents and the use data from 6 European countries, each represented by 1 school leader, 1 teacher, and 1 migrant parent. Findings suggest that there are many initiatives and effective practices at local level. However, some initiatives and practices may not be addressing effectively the needs of parents in supporting their children regarding inclusion and education. Seeking support from other parents and increased digitalized communication, which refer to the Kronos system in Bronfenbrenner's framework, may, however, be beneficial. The chapter also discusses how the wider school-family relationships and the community may play an important role for migrant children to be included in the school and larger society, and that this should be given further consideration in top-level policy. 2 other factors on macro level in Bronfenbrenner's model that are important for migrant children's situation or inclusion are national legal frameworks and anti-bullying programs. Working Group 3 addresses these aspects in their work. The legal frameworks that are analyzed include the Education Acts in 6 European countries, aiming getting an overview and to understand the legal reasons for national prevention and intervention strategies. The findings show that there is a great variance between countries and that none of the Education Acts address bullying or harassment as a problem connected to migrants. Some of the acts do address directly or indirectly issues of bullying, aspects of migration that are discussed mostly, however, relates to language learning. Working Group 3 also investigates more specific anti-bullying programs as they compare the way 43 programs target migrant children and youth in 5 European countries. In addition to address that most of the programs do not target migrant children and youth, results show that the programs sometimes refer to issues of inclusion and of overcoming discrimination and racism. Moreover, only 13 explicitly refer to migration-related diversity, and also only 2 of the programs were evidence-based. So, Working Group 4 focuses on the promotion of students' voice to tackle bullying. More specifically, the degree to which the discourse and evidence that already exist on this topic address diverse students are discussed. Thus, the focus is on how students from indigenous, immigrant, and ethnic groups may be encouraged in generating information and ideas. The findings are based on literature that concerns students at secondary school level, voices and views across 6 European countries. Working Group 5 addressed the effects that school design, sense of safety, and school climate may have on bullying and the well-being of children and youth. This contribution from Working Group 5 is a review and discuss how it is vital to understand the interplay between the physical and social environments in school. So this reflected the way the ecosystem in the model of Bronfenbrenner. The focus is on how these dynamics influence not only students' outcome, but also their well-being and relationships, including bullying and specifically the inclusion of children from different backgrounds. Then last, we have Working Group 6, which concern what we might call aspects of the Corona systems in Bronfenbrenner's bioecological model. As cyberbullying has appeared because of the technological development and media influence over time, it might be seen as a socio-historical condition. Working Group 6 addresses a cross-cultural perspective of prejudice-based cyberbullying. Current knowledge on the topic is explored, focusing on the exploration of 7 reasons for prejudice-based cyberbullying: family origin, skin color, religion, and nationality, sexual orientation, disability, and poverty. Findings from high school students from 17 countries revealed that the most frequent reason for cyberbullying from the perspective of the bully was the sexual orientation of the victim, while the most frequent perceived reason for cyberbullying from the perspective of the ones who were victimized were not only their sexual orientation, but also their religion or belief. Working Group 6 also focuses on technology as the bullying helplines existing in altogether 18 European countries are investigated to analyze their characteristics and search for those that have been proven to be the most useful and inducers to report bullying cases. Results show that the characteristics of helplines varied greatly from one country to another, from having only one helpline available to up to 12. Moreover, none of them was specific to ethnic cultural bullying, which indicates a problem falling to address the ethnic cultural perspective, not only at the national, but also at the regional level in general. More about the results from these groups will be available in this coming book from Routledge, International Perspectives on Migration, Bullying, and School Environments, exploring implication for students with refugee and other migrant backgrounds, coming hopefully early in 2024. So stay tuned for that, for this book. I will now present for you some recommendations for prevention and intervention that I, together with some colleagues, present in chapter 20 in this book from Peter Smith and James O'Higgins Norman. We base our recommendations both on the bioecological perspectives and a developmental intergroup perspective, which emphasize that cultivating norms that promotes diversity and inclusion together with anti-bullying norms may strengthen bullying prevention. Besides promoting moral principle against bullying, one important aspect on individual and group level is to focus on immigrant boys' experiences of affiliation, belonging, to prevent them from using bullying as a strategy to integrate into a peer group or to separate from those they do not want to be affiliated with in a group or class. On the class and school level, school leaders should employ high-level intercultural education practices, so that teachers should regularly engage students in discussions about various sociocultural groups, highlighting commonalities across groups, while also building norms of respect for group differences. Moreover, in prevention efforts that utilize intercultural education approaches, students should learn about how diversity functions, including discrimination and stereotyping, and how those processes might manifest in bullying and also bystander behaviors. Youth should also be taught how power dynamics in bullying emerge across multiple levels of the social ecology. Individuals are not simply victimized based on their individual characteristics, but also based on norms and a power hierarchy present in schools and in the larger society. Finally, yet important, findings from studies in the US highlight the critical nature of school-parent relationships, which was also done in working group 2 in our tribe's action. So they address student, family, and cultural factors that influence the successful implementation of bullying prevention programs. So regarding intervention, we have seen that some young people's bullying is associated with high levels of prejudice towards other ethnic immigrant groups, while in some other students, bullying may be a goal-oriented behavior aimed at acquiring and maintaining high popularity status or affiliation and acceptance. In order to address the latter group of bullies successfully, interventions programs should be aimed to improve social competence in order to teach alternative ways to achieve high popularity, affiliation, and acceptance among peers, and to promote rewarding defending in place of bullying among bystanders. In addition, we need to refocus already existing anti-bullying intervention efforts in order to give a greater consideration to prejudice and stereotypes and also self-justification. The individualistic or societal group assumption underpinning bullying problems need to be challenged by wider, micro, systematic factors that point to that bullying is not only problems between individuals in a group, but may be expression of wider intercultural problems. I also just want to mention one review done when work on this topic started. Of the 20 anti-bullying interventions identified when reviewing racist, bias, stigma, or identity-based interventions performed in the literature published between 2000 and 2015, only one addressed stigma related to ethnicity and race. They addressed instead bullying in general. Very few considered actions at the level of the larger community, and very few were evidence-based. And From the research from working group 3, the focus on migration issues has not actually increased very much from what they find in their study. So to conclude regarding prevention and intervention ethnic-based bullying should be adapted on and developed considering culture and context specificities. The role of prejudice, stereotypes, and intergroup, outgroup cognitive processes need to be carefully considered in developing anti-bullying intervention, addressing bullying among and towards immigrants and ethnic minority group members. And in order to contrast prejudice and stigmas, actions based on the principle of strengthening contact among social groups seems to be most effective. These actions can reduce anxiety towards other groups and increase empathic emotions towards the outgroup members. Some gaps that I have found in that have been found in the literature. More studies are needed that rigorously examine the effects of intercultural education approaches on different forms of bullying and victimization. More studies are needed that rigorously examine the effectiveness of evidence-based anti-bullying programs on different groups of immigrant youth. And also more studies are needed that examine which elements of anti-bullying programs and intercultural education approaches are most effective in preventing and reducing bullying and victimization among different groups of immigrant youth. Research-based modules or intervention programs that specifically address stereotypes, prejudice, and self-justification of perpetrating bullying against immigrants or ethnic outgroup peers need to be developed, piloted, and evaluated. Intergroup contact interventions that include the promotion of intercultural friendships between youth belonging to different immigrant, minority, and ethnic outgroup peers need to be rigorously tested regarding their effectiveness in reducing or preventing bullying and victimization in multicultural schools. So I will soon end my presentation just with some recommendations. The exam of the mechanisms underlying bullying generally among immigrants and ethnic bullying specifically suggests the need for integrating specific actions to tackle these forms of bullying in the standard anti-bullying prevention and intervention programs. There is need of designing educational programs which would prevent vulnerability through the inclusion in education. Teachers should focus on what give immigrant boys experiences of affiliation. Prevention and intervention efforts should address moral disengagement mechanisms. Both individual and peer group levels focus on composition of peer groups. So to be a minority is not necessarily the vulnerable aspects, or is more the vulnerable aspects more than having an immigrant background might be. Social norms regarding diversity in peer groups and classrooms should be addressed. Specific information training programs should be developed and implemented to inform a broader ecology of systems. Both educators, psychologists, social workers, and health personnel. Implementation of policies to contrast the socialization through mass media and extremist groups of the deviant culture is recommendable. So I have come to an end. So to conclude, regarding the recommendation, we need to combine actions at different levels, that is individual, interpersonal, structural, and the level of community and society. Addressing different groups, both critical individuals, the peer group, adults at school and in the family, and focusing on specific elements, that is improvement of social skills and social competence, climate, prejudice, and attitudes against immigrant-specific ethnic groups. we need to stress the importance of educating children to be tolerant and respecting towards diversity. So thank you. That was what I wanted to present for you today.